A week had passed since the Nebula Gauntlet, but Hack's whiskers still twitched at the memory of swirling gases and hidden asteroids. The broken Promise sat in its dock, repair drones buzzing around it like insects, patching up the myriad scars from their latest victory. Hack was running diagnostics on the navigation systems when he noticed Captain Jeb tense up, his eyes fixed on something beyond the docking bay's entrance. Following his gaze, Hack spotted a familiar figure hurrying towards them. Cruz, the diplomat from Jeb's homeworld. Trouble, Hack squeaked, already reaching for the ship's comm to alert Killian. Jeb held up a hand, his expression a mix of curiosity and wariness. Let's hear him out first. Cruz approached, his usually immaculate appearance somewhat disheveled, eyes darting around as if expecting to be accosted at any moment. Captain Sheets, he said in a low, urgent voice, we need to talk. Now. I've arranged a secure location. Jeb's eyebrow raised. Arranged? How exactly did you manage that in this tightly controlled hellhole? Cruz's laugh was bitter and entirely without humor. The same way anything gets done around here, Captain. Bribery. Lots of it. Now, please, we don't have much time. Hack watched as Jeb considered for a moment, then nodded sharply. Hacked, you're with me. Killian, he called over his shoulder, keep an eye on things here. They followed Cruz through a labyrinth of corridors, each turn taking them further from the busy public areas of the station. Finally, they arrived at a nondescript door. Cruz placed his hand on a scanner, and it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a small, Spartanly furnished room. The walls were a dull gray, devoid of any decoration save for a few blinking data panels. A table dominated the center, surrounded by uncomfortable-looking chairs. We're secure here, Cruz said, some of the tension leaving his shoulders as the door sealed behind them. No monitoring devices, no prying eyes. I made sure of it. All right, Cruz, Jeb said, taking a seat. Hack perched on another chair, his sensitive ears pricked for any sign of danger. What's so important that you're throwing around bribes like confetti? Cruz sank into a chair, suddenly looking far older than his years. Captain, what I'm about to tell you, it goes beyond the races, beyond even the corruption you've already witnessed. Hack felt his fur stand on end at the gravity in Cruz's voice. The entire system, Captain, the races, the governments behind them, all of it, it's rotten to the core. Bribery isn't just common, it's the only language they understand. Do you think it was easy for me to even show up here? Every appearance, every conversation. It all has to be bought and paid for. Jeb's face had hardened into a mask of barely contained anger. And the races themselves? The deaths, the suffering, all for entertainment. Cruz nodded grimly. Entertainment, political maneuvering, economic gain, it's all tied together in a web so tangled I doubt even those at the top fully understand it anymore. It's why Julius IX rebelled all those years ago. Hack saw Jeb flinch at the mention of his homeworld. The war, Jeb said softly. The one that landed me here. Yes, Cruz confirmed. Julius IX tried to break free from this corrupt system, and for their trouble they branded you and others like you as terrorists, condemning you to these death races. Hack's mind reeled at the implications. He had known the races were cruel, but this level of systemic corruption was beyond anything he had imagined. So why tell us this now, Jeb asked, his voice tight with controlled emotion. What's changed? Cruz leaned forward, a glint of something like hope in his eyes. Because, Captain, we found a way to start fighting back. The officials have agreed to a new concept, one that might just give us the edge we need. They're calling it sponsorship. Hack's ears perked up at this. Sponsorship? In these deadly races? I don't understand, Jeb said, echoing Hack's confusion. How does sponsorship help us fight against all? This he gestured vaguely, encompassing the corrupt system Cruz had described. A small smile played at the corners of Cruz's mouth. Because, Captain, with the right sponsors we can start to level the playing field. And I've made sure that you and your allies have the best sponsor of all, Julius IX itself. As Cruz began to outline the details of this new sponsorship system, Hack felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. They were about to enter a new phase of the races, one with higher stakes and greater potential than ever before. Whatever came next, Hack knew one thing for certain: the game was changing, and the broken promise was at the center of it all. As Cruz continued his explanation, Hack noticed Jeb's allies filing into the room. Captain Yara, Hoffman, and several other allied crew leaders took seats around the table, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Cruz nodded to the newcomers before continuing. "Now that we're all here, let me explain this new sponsor concept in detail. It's taken a lot of negotiation and, yes, more than a few bribes, but we've managed to push through a system that could change everything." Hack leaned forward, his whiskers twitching with anticipation. "The race officials have agreed to allow racers to be sponsored," Cruz said, his voice taking on a note of triumph. "This means external entities can provide support to racing teams within certain parameters." "What kind of support are we talking about?" Yara asked, her eyes narrowing. Cruz smiled. "Two main areas: ship upgrades and dedicated repair teams." A murmur of excitement rippled through the gathered racers. Hack saw Hoffman's eyes light up at the mention of repairs. "That's right," Hoffman. Cruz nodded, catching the old captain's reaction. "After that disastrous repair job on your ship a few races back, we made sure to include a clause for sponsor-provided repair crews. No more sabotage disguised as maintenance." Hoffman let out a relieved sigh. "About damn time. Nearly got us killed. That botched job did." "Now, there are restrictions," Cruz continued. "All upgrades have to meet specifications set by the officials. They're not about to let us turn these ships into unstoppable war machines. But even within those limits, the potential for improvement is significant." Jeb, who had been quietly absorbing all of this, finally spoke up. "What's the catch, Cruz?" "There's always a catch." Cruz's expression sobered. "Sharp as ever, Captain. Yes, there's a catch. The race officials get a cut of all sponsorship deals. It's how we got them to agree to this in the first place." Hack felt his fur bristle at the blatant corruption, but he had to admit it was a clever move. If they couldn't beat the corrupt system, they were finding ways to work within it. "So who's sponsoring us?" one of the other captains asked. Cruz's smile returned, wider than before. "I'm glad you asked. Through a combination of government funds, private citizens, and businesses from Julius 9, we've secured sponsorship for Jeb and all of you in his alliance. You're covered, at least for the foreseeable future." The room erupted in excited chatter. Hack could hardly believe what he was hearing. After so long being at the mercy of shoddy equipment and sabotage, they were finally going to have proper support. "There's more," Cruz said, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the excitement. "Negotiations are ongoing for your eventual freedom. But in the meantime, it's crucial that you continue to participate in these races. I know it's asking a lot to keep playing their sick games, but every race you run, every victory you secure, strengthens our position at the negotiating table." Hack watched as Jeb absorbed this information, his face a complex mix of emotions: hope, determination, and a flash of something darker, perhaps the weight of knowing how many more dangerous races lay ahead. "We're with you," Jeb, Yara said firmly, and the other captains nodded in agreement. "Whatever it takes to win our freedom and expose this corrupt system." Jeb looked around at his allies, his expression softening with gratitude. "Thank you, all of you. We've come this far together. We'll see it through to the end." As the meeting began to wrap up, Hack found his mind racing with the possibilities this new sponsorship system opened up. Better shields, faster engines, weapons that actually worked reliably. The broken promise could become the ship Jeb had always deserved. But more than that, Hack realized this was a turning point. They were no longer just prisoners running a deadly gauntlet. With the backing of Julius 9 and the unity of their alliance, they had become something more. They were a symbol of resistance against a corrupt system, a beacon of hope for all those trapped in this cruel game. As they filed out of the room, preparing to face whatever new challenges the races would throw at them, Hack felt a surge of determination. Whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger and better equipped than ever before. As the meeting about sponsorships wound down, Cruz cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention once more. "There's one more thing," he said, reaching into his bag. Part of our negotiation included the right to deliver personal messages to racers from their home worlds. A hushed silence fell over the room as crews began distributing small data chips to various members of the Alliance. Hacked watched as tough, hardened racers who had stared death in the face countless times suddenly looked vulnerable, their hands trembling as they accepted these precious links to home. Jeb was the first to activate his chip, and a hologram sprang to life, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile that mirrored Jeb's own. Hacked recognized her from Jeb's descriptions: Alara, his wife. "My darling," her voice filled the room, full of love and longing. "We're all rooting for you here on Julius 9. Your children ask about you every day, and I tell them how brave their father is, fighting not just for his own freedom but for justice for all racers." Hacked saw a tear roll down Jeb's cheek, quickly wiped away. The message continued, Alara updating Jeb on their family, on the support movement growing on Julius 9, on her unwavering faith in him. As it ended, Jeb clutched the chip to his chest, his eyes closed in a moment of private emotion. Around the room, similar scenes played out. Captain Yara laughed through tears as she listened to her brother's booming voice. Hoffman sat in stunned silence, watching a message from grandchildren he'd never met. Each message seemed to breathe new life into its recipient, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Hacked found himself both moved and a little lost. As he watched his crewmates and allies absorb these precious words from home, he realized he had no such message to look forward to. His own people, the Hibbards, didn't believe in such sentimental communications. A Hibbard should be above such emotional displays, his father's voice echoed in his memory. And yet, seeing the strength these messages gave to his friends, Hacked couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. Not for the first time, he wondered if the Hibbard way was truly the best way. His musings were interrupted by Jeb's hand on his shoulder. "You okay there?" Hacked the captain asked, his voice gentler than Hacked had ever heard it. Hacked nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, Captain. It's good to see everyone getting news from home." Jeb's eyes, still bright with emotion from his own message, searched Hack's face. "You know, Hacked, family isn't always about blood. This crew, this alliance, were a family too, and you're a crucial part of it." The warmth that spread through Hacked at those words surprised him. He realized that somewhere along the line, amid the dangers and triumphs they'd shared, he had indeed found a family, different from what he'd left behind on his homeworld, but no less real. As the crew began to disperse, each clutching their precious messages, there was a new energy in the air. The weariness that had hung over them since the Nebula Gauntlet seemed to have lifted, replaced by a renewed determination. Hacked overheard snippets of conversation as people filed out. "We've got to win this for them. Can't let them down, not when they believe in us so much. Just a few more races, and we might actually see them again." Crews, watching the impact of his delivery, nodded in satisfaction. "This is why we fight," he said quietly to Jeb and Hacked. "Not just for freedom, but for the chance to return to those who love us, to build a better future for all." As they made their way back to the Broken Promise, Hacked felt a new resolve settling over him. They had sponsorship now, giving them a fighting chance. They had the strength of their alliance. And they had the love and hope of those waiting for them to come home. Whatever races lay ahead, whatever challenges the corrupt officials might throw at them, they were ready. More than ready, they were determined to win, not just for themselves, but for everyone who believed in them. The announcement came over the station's comm system, jolting Hacked from his pre-race diagnostics. "Attention all racers. Prepare for immediate departure. Today's race will be a 4-hour circuit around the system's inner dwarf moons and planets. Race commencement in 30 minutes. Hack's whiskers twitched with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This would be their first race with the new sponsorship system in place, and he was eager to see how it would play out. "Status report," Jeb called out as he strode onto the bridge, looking more energized than Hacked had seen him in weeks. "All systems green," Captain Hacked replied, his paws dancing across his console. "The sponsored upgrades are integrated and functioning perfectly. Shields are at 120% of our previous capacity, and the new navigation system is, well, it's beautiful." Killian grunted from his station, a rare smile on his scarred face. "Weapons are hot and ready. These new targeting systems are something else. Almost makes me feel sorry for the competition. Almost. As the Broken Promise maneuvered into its starting position, Hack saw their allies taking up formation around them. There was a new confidence in their movements, a sense of unity that hadn't been there before. The starting klaxon blared, and they were off. The first leg of the race was relatively straightforward, a sprint towards the innermost dwarf planet. Hack's new navigation systems allowed him to plot a course that skimmed dangerously close to the planet's atmosphere, shaving precious seconds off their time. "We've got company," Killian growled as they rounded the far side of the planet. 3 bogies, coming in hot. Jeb's hands were steady on the controls. Evasive maneuvers. Hacked, find us a path through the debris field ahead. Killian, pick your shots carefully. We don't want to create more obstacles for ourselves. What followed was a deadly dance through a field of space debris, energy weapons lighting up the void around them. Hack's enhanced sensors allowed him to guide them through gaps that would have been suicide before, while Killian's precision shooting kept their pursuers at bay. As they emerged from the debris field, Hack noticed something on his long-range scanners. "Captain, 2 of our allies are in trouble. Looks like they took some heavy fire back there." Jeb's face hardened with determination. "Relay our sensor data to them. Guide them through if you can." For the next hour, the race became a complex game of offense and defense. The Broken Promise led the charge, with Hack using their advanced systems to provide support to their allies while simultaneously plotting their own course. They were approaching the final stretch when disaster struck. One of the hostile ships, clearly desperate, attempted a ramming maneuver. Jeb's skilled piloting avoided a direct hit, but the glancing blow sent them spinning towards a small moon. "Brace for impact," Jeb shouted, fighting with the controls. The Broken Promise skimmed the moon's surface, kicking up a plume of dust and debris. For a heart-stopping moment, Hack thought they were done for, but the enhanced shields held, and Jeb managed to pull them out of the dive. As they stabilized, Hack saw the finish line looming ahead. Despite the close call, they were still in the lead. "Give it everything we've got," Jeb ordered, his voice tight with concentration. The Broken Promise surged forward, crossing the finish line a full 30 seconds ahead of the next ship. The bridge erupted in cheers as the reality of their victory sank in. As they docked back at the station, Hack reviewed the race data. They had won, yes, but the cost had been high. Several of their allied ships had taken heavy damage, and the debris field they'd navigated was now even more treacherous. Jeb seemed to read his thoughts. "Good work out there, everyone. But don't celebrate too hard. Something tells me this is just the beginning." Hack nodded, already running simulations for future races. They had won this round, but the game was far from over. As he watched the repair drones swarm over their allied ships, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenges were yet to come. The Broken Promise had barely docked when the station's comm system crackled to life once more. Hack's ears perked up, his fur standing on end as he heard the announcement. "Attention all racers. Prepare for immediate redeployment. A second race will commence on the same circuit in 15 minutes. All ships are required to participate." A stunned silence fell over the bridge, broken only by Killian's colorful curse. "You've got to be kidding me," the weapons officer growled. "We've barely had time to power down the engines." Jeb's face was a mask of grim determination. "They're testing us," he said, his voice low, "pushing to see how we handle back-to-back races. Hacked, what's our status?" Hack's paws flew over his console, running rapid diagnostics. "Not good, Captain. We're down to 70% shield capacity. The port thruster is showing signs of strain, and our weapon systems need a cool-down period." "And that's us in top form," Jeb mused, his eyes scanning the docking bay where their allies' ships showed even more significant damage. "All right, people, this is where we prove what we're made of. Hacked, prioritize navigation and defensive systems. Killian, we're going to have to rely more on evasion than firepower this time." As they maneuvered back into the starting position, Hack's sensors picked up the debris left from their previous race, still littering the course. "Captain, the circuit is even more dangerous now. That debris field we navigated, it's about 30% denser." Jeb nodded, his hands tightening on the controls. Noted. We'll have to be extra careful. Keep a close eye on our allies, too. I have a feeling we're all going to need to watch each other's backs out there. The starting klaxon blared, somehow sounding more ominous than before. The broken promise shot forward, immediately having to weave through a cloud of debris that hadn't been there in the first race. The early part of the race was a tense game of cat and mouse. With their weapon systems not at full capacity, they had to rely on Jeb's piloting skills and Hack's navigation to stay ahead of their more aggressive competitors. Two bogies, coming in hot on our starboard side, Killian called out, his frustration evident as he tried to coax more power from the overtaxed weapons. I see them, Jeb replied calmly. Hacked, find me a path through that debris cluster ahead. Let's see if we can lose them in there. Hack's enhanced sensors scanned the chaotic field of twisted metal and rock fragments. Path plotted, Captain, but it's going to be tight. We'll have less than a meter of clearance in some spots. It'll have to do, Jeb said, guiding the ship into the treacherous maze. What followed was a masterclass in precision flying. Jeb threaded the broken promise through gaps that seemed to defy possibility, while their pursuers, lacking the advanced navigation systems, quickly fell behind or worse. As they emerged from the debris field, a distress call came through from one of their allies. Captain Yara's ship had taken heavy damage and was struggling to maintain race speed. Hacked, what's the quickest way to reach them without losing our position? Jeb asked, already adjusting their course. Hacked quickly calculated, factoring in the new debris patterns and the positions of other racers. If we skirt the atmosphere of the second moon, we can intercept them without losing more than one place. Jeb didn't hesitate. Do it. They reached Yara's ship just as a pair of hostile racers were moving in for the kill. Killian, despite the weapon's reduced power, managed to drive them off with a series of well-placed shots. Thanks for the save, Yara's voice crackled over the comm. Didn't think we'd make it out of this one. Just returning the favor, Jeb replied. Now let's finish this race. The final stretch was a grueling test of endurance. With systems strained to their limits and debris from two races now cluttering the course, every moment was a potential disaster waiting to happen. As they approached the finish line, Hack's sensors picked up a massive piece of debris, the remnants of a ship destroyed in the previous race, directly in their path. Captain. Dead ahead, Hacked cried out. Jeb's response was immediate. He sent the broken promise into a barrel roll that skimmed them along the edge of the debris, missing collision by mere centimeters. The maneuver, while risky, gave them a burst of speed as they straightened out. All power to engines, Jeb commanded, his voice tight with concentration. The broken promise surged forward, pushing past its limits. Hack's console lit up with warnings, but he ignored them, focused solely on the rapidly approaching finish line. With a final burst of speed that seemed to draw on the very last reserves of both ship and crew, they crossed the finish line. As they stabilized on the other side, Hack's sensors confirmed what they'd all hoped for. We did it, Captain Hacked exclaimed, his voice a mix of disbelief and elation. First place. A cheer went up on the bridge, quickly tempered by exhaustion. They had won, but at a tremendous cost. Every system was redlining, and Hacked could hear the ominous creaking of stressed metal throughout the ship. As they maneuvered towards the docking bay, Hacked picked up Yara's ship on his sensors, limping across the finish line in fourth place. Outstanding work, everyone, Jeb said, his voice filled with pride despite the evident fatigue. Especially you, Hacked. That navigation through the debris field was nothing short of miraculous. Hacked felt a warm glow of pride at his captain's words, but it was quickly sobered by the realization of the challenges they'd faced and the likelihood of more to come. The bridge was quiet as they docked once more, the crew exhausted but proud of what they'd accomplished. They had faced an unexpected challenge and come through it not just intact, but victorious, while also protecting their allies. Jeb's voice broke the silence. We've won this round, but stay alert. Something tells me the surprises aren't over yet. Hack nodded, already running systems checks and plotting potential strategies for whatever might come next. As he worked, he couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and excitement. They had survived and triumphed in 2 brutal back-to-back races, but what else did the officials have in store for them? The docking bay was a flurry of activity as repair crews swarmed over the battered ships. Hack watched from the Broken Promise's viewport, his whiskers twitching anxiously. They had barely survived 2 grueling races, and the thought of a third seemed almost impossible. The station's comm system crackled to life once more, and Hack braced himself for another immediate race call. Instead, a different message came through. Attention all racers. There will be a 3-hour maintenance period before the final race of this circuit. Use this time wisely. Race officials out. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the ship. Jeb, who had been coordinating repairs, turned to his crew with a grim smile. All right, people, we've got a chance to catch our breath and patch up. Let's make every minute count. As if on cue, crews appeared at the airlock, looking harried but determined. Captain Sheets, a word if you please. I've got updates on our sponsorship benefits. Jeb nodded, gesturing for Hack and Killian to join them in a quiet corner of the docking bay. Cruz's voice was low as he spoke, his eyes darting around to ensure they weren't overheard. The sponsors have come through with some additional funding, Cruz said, a hint of excitement in his voice. We've got new weapons for you, top-of-the-line stuff that should give you an edge in this final race. Killian's scarred face lit up with interest. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Cruz pulled out a data pad, showing schematics of sleek, powerful-looking projectile weapons. These beauties are designed to penetrate shields more effectively than energy weapons. But that's not all. He swiped to another image, this one showing a cloud of small, glowing objects. This is what they're calling a mine cloud, essentially. It's a dispersal of micro-explosives that can be deployed behind the ship. Anyone following too close is in for a nasty surprise. Hack's eyes widened as he considered the tactical implications. That could be incredibly useful for creating space between us and pursuers, especially in tight spots. Jeb nodded thoughtfully. It's a game changer, all right. But I'm guessing the officials don't know about these. Cruz's smile was sharp. Let's just say we've been creative with our interpretation of the approved weapons list. As far as they know, you're just getting some standard upgrades. As Cruz left to oversee the installation of the new weapons, Jeb turned to his crew. This final race is going to be the toughest yet. We've got these new tools, but so does everyone else who's sponsored. And after 2 races, that course is going to be a minefield of debris. Hack nodded, already running simulations in his mind. I'll recalibrate our sensors to account for the increased debris. If we combine that data with our knowledge of the course from the previous races, we might be able to plot some paths that others won't see. Good thinking, Jeb approved. Killian, I want you to get familiar with these new weapons. We might only get one shot at using them effectively, so make it count. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Hack couldn't shake a feeling of both excitement and dread. They were better equipped than ever before, but the stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about winning a race anymore, it was about proving the worth of their alliance, about taking one more step towards freedom. The hours ticked by in a blur of activity. Repair drones buzzed around the ship, patching hull breaches and reinforcing stressed components. Hack's console was a whirlwind of data as he fine-tuned their navigation systems and plotted potential race strategies. Just as the final system checks were being completed, another announcement rang through the station. All racers, prepare for immediate departure. This will be the final race of the circuit. May the best team win. There was something ominous in those last words, a hint that this race would be unlike anything they'd faced before. As the Broken Promise maneuvered into its starting position, Hack looked out at the debris-strewn course ahead. The remnants of the previous 2 races created a chaotic maze that would challenge even the most skilled pilots. Jeb's voice cut through Hack's thoughts, steady and determined. Whatever happens out there, we stick together. We've come too far to falter now. Let's show them what the Broken Promise and its allies can really do. The starting klaxon blared, and they plunged once more into the unknown. As the stars blurred around them, Hack steeled himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. This was more than just a race now. It was a fight for survival, for freedom, and for the future they all dreamed of. The final battle was about to begin. The starting klaxon blared, and the broken promise shot forward into the chaos of the final race. Immediately, HFY's enhanced sensors lit up with warnings. The debris field from the previous 2 races had turned the once clear course into a treacherous maze. Multiple contacts, all vectors HFY called out, his paws flying over the console. The debris is interfering with long-range scans. I can only give us clear data for about 5,000 meters ahead. Jeb's face was a mask of concentration as he threaded the ship through the obstacle course. Do what you can, HFY. Killian, be ready with those new weapons. I have a feeling we'll need them sooner rather than later. They weren't even a quarter of the way through the first lap when the attacks began. 3 ships, their hulls bearing the marks of recent and hasty repairs, bore down on them from different angles. Evasive maneuvers, Jeb ordered, sending the broken promise into a series of wild spins and dives that had HFY's stomach doing flips. Killian's hands danced over the weapons console. Trying out those new projectiles, he growled. A series of sleek, metallic objects shot out from the broken promise, streaking towards their attackers. The effect was immediate and devastating. The projectiles punched through the enemy shields like they weren't even there, causing one ship to veer off wildly and another to explode in a brilliant flash. By the cosmic void, HFY breathed, watching the destruction on his sensors. Cruz wasn't kidding about these weapons. But there was no time to celebrate. As they rounded the first of the system's dwarf moons, a massive chunk of debris, possibly from one of the ships they'd just disabled, loomed directly in their path. Act, options, Jeb called out, his hands tightening on the controls. HFY's mind raced, calculations streaming through his consciousness. There's a gap, but it's tight, really tight. 15 degrees to port, then a barrel roll to starboard. We'll have less than a meter of clearance. Jeb didn't hesitate. The broken promise moved with surgical precision, skimming past the debris so closely that HFY could have sworn he heard it scraping the hull. As they emerged from the debris field, HFY's sensors picked up a distress signal. "Captain, it's one of our allies. Hoffman's ship. They're caught in some kind of gravity eddy created by the debris." Jeb's jaw tightened. They were in the lead, but going back for Hoffman would cost them precious time and potentially the race. For a moment, HFY thought he saw doubt flicker across the captain's face. Then Jeb's expression hardened with resolve. "Plot a course to Hoffman," he ordered. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The rescue attempt was harrowing. The gravity eddy had created a swirling vortex of debris that threatened to tear apart any ship that ventured too close. It took all of Jeb's piloting skills and HFY's navigational genius to maneuver close enough to extend a tractor beam to Hoffman's ship. As they pulled their ally free, Killian's voice cut through the tension. "We've got company. Looks like some of our less friendly competitors decided to take advantage of our little detour." 5 ships were closing in fast, their weapons charged and ready. HFY could see on his sensors that they were the same models as the ex-military vessel that had given them trouble in previous races. "Time to test out that mine cloud," Jeb said, his voice grim. "Killian, on my mark." They waited until the pursuing ships were almost on top of them. Then, just as HFY's sensors screamed warnings of imminent collision, Jeb gave the order. "Now." A cloud of tiny, glittering objects burst from the broken promise's aft section, hanging in space for a split second before erupting into a cascade of explosions. The pursuing ships flew right into the trap, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer number of small but potent detonations. When the chaos cleared, only 2 of the 5 ships remained, both badly damaged and no longer a threat. But the battle had cost them. They were now in 4th place, with the lead ships nearly half a lap ahead. Hoffman's vessel, still limping from its ordeal in the gravity eddy, fell back to join the other Allied ships in the rear guard. "We've still got a chance," HFY said, his voice filled with determination. "If we push the engines to the limit and take some calculated risks through the debris fields, we can make up the lost time." Jeb nodded, a fierce glint in his eye. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. HFY, plot us the craziest, most efficient course you can think of. Killian, be ready to clear our path if needed. It's time to show these officials what the broken promise can really do." As they surged forward into the most dangerous part of the race, HFY felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. They had sacrificed their lead to save an ally, used incredible new weapons to fend off attackers, and were now about to attempt the riskiest maneuvers of their racing career. Whatever the outcome, HFY knew this would be a race the universe would never forget. The broken promise hurtled through space, pushing its engines beyond their limits. HFY's paws flew over his console, guiding them through gaps in the debris field that seemed to defy possibility. They had clawed their way back to second place, but the lead ship was still frustratingly out of reach. "Final lap," Jeb announced, his voice tight with concentration. "HFY, anything left in your bag of tricks?" HFY's whiskers twitched as he analyzed the sensor data. "There's a dense cluster of debris ahead. If we thread the needle just right, we might be able to use the gravitational eddies to slingshot us forward. But Captain, the margin for error is non-existent," Jeb finished, a grim smile on his face. "Sounds like our kind of odds. Do it." What followed was a harrowing dance through a maze of twisted metal and rock. Jeb's piloting was beyond masterful, responding to HFY's rapid-fire directions with inhuman precision. The ship groaned and shuddered, stressed to its very limits. And then, suddenly, they were through. The debris field spat them out like a cosmic slingshot, sending them hurtling forward at a speed that pinned HFY to his seat. "We've done it," HFY exclaimed, his eyes wide as he checked his sensors. "We're neck and neck with the lead ship." But their elation was short-lived. As they rounded the final moon of the circuit, a new contact appeared on HFY's sensors. His blood ran cold as he recognized the configuration. "Captain, we've got a problem. It's that ex-military ship, the one that gave us trouble before. They must have been lying in wait." Killian's growl was audible, even over the strain of the engines. "Cowards, trying to ambush us at the finish line." Jeb's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "HFY, what's their weapons status?" HFY's paws danced over his console, but before he could answer, alarms blared across the bridge. "They're powering up missile systems. But that's not allowed in the races." "Tell that to them," Jeb muttered. "Evasive maneuvers. Killian, ready the mine cloud. We might only get one shot at this." The ex-military ship closed in fast, its sleek design a stark contrast to the battered racers around it. HFY's sensors screamed warnings as the enemy vessel locked onto them. "Missiles launched," HFY cried out, his fur standing on end. "Now," Killian, Jeb ordered. The mine cloud deployed, a glittering swarm of deadly particles spreading out behind the broken promise. The incoming missiles plowed into the cloud, setting off a chain reaction of explosions. For a moment, HFY thought they were in the clear. Then his sensors picked up something that made his heart stop. "One missile made it through," he shouted. "Impact in 3 seconds." Time seemed to slow. HFY saw Jeb's hands move on the controls, felt the ship begin to turn. But he knew, with a cold certainty, that they wouldn't be fast enough. The missile struck, but not where HFY expected. At the last possible second, Hoffman's ship had inserted itself between the broken promise and the incoming projectile. The explosion was blinding, temporarily overloading HFY's sensors. When his vision cleared, Hoffman's ship was gone, reduced to scattered debris. The ex-military vessel, caught in the edge of the blast, spiraled out of control. "No," HFY whispered, the loss hitting him like a physical blow. Jeb's voice cut through the shocked silence on the bridge. "We honor their sacrifice by finishing this race. Full power to engines. Let's win this for Hoffman and everyone else these bastards have taken from us." The broken promise surged forward, fueled by a mixture of grief and determination. The finish line loomed ahead, the lead ship now a distant second in the wake of the chaos. As they crossed the line, securing their victory, HFY felt none of the usual elation. They had won, yes, but the cost had been higher than ever before. The bridge was silent as they maneuvered into the docking bay. Each crew member lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the events of the race. Jeb's voice, when he finally spoke, was filled with a steely resolve. "We've shown them what we can do. But more importantly, we've shown them who we are. We don't abandon our allies. We don't cheat. We win on our terms, no matter the cost. He paused, looking each crew member in the eye. This victory isn't just ours. It belongs to Hoffman, to every racer who's been lost to this corrupt system. And I promise you, we will make it mean something. This is more than a race now. It's a revolution. And it's only just beginning. As the reality of their situation sank in, Hacked realized that everything had changed. They weren't just racing for freedom anymore. They were fighting for justice, for a complete overhaul of a system that treated lives as disposable entertainment. The docking bay was eerily quiet as the broken promise settled into its berth. Usually there would be cheers, celebrations, the bustle of repair crews and officials. But today, a somber mood hung in the air, the weight of Hoffman's sacrifice felt by all. As the crew disembarked, Hack noticed other racers, even those who weren't part of their alliance, watching them with a mixture of awe and respect. The story of their victory, and the price paid for it, had clearly spread quickly. Cruz was waiting for them, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Congratulations on your victory," he said, his voice low. "And I'm deeply sorry about Hoffman. His loss will not be in vain." Jeb nodded grimly. "Make sure of it, Cruz. We need to know that all of this means something." As if on cue, the station's communication system crackled to life. "Attention all racers. In light of recent events, there will be a mandatory meeting for all crew captains in 1 hour. Attendance is non-negotiable." Hack's whiskers twitched nervously. "What do you think that's about, Captain?" Jeb's eyes narrowed. Could be anything. A new set of rules to try and rein us in. Or maybe they're finally realizing they can't control this anymore. He turned to Cruz. "Any insider information you can give us?" Cruz shook his head. "This is as much a surprise to me as it is to you. But I'll do what I can to gather intel before the meeting. In the meantime, you should all rest. You've been through hell today." As Cruz hurried off, Jeb gathered his crew close. "I know we're all feeling the loss of Hoffman," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But remember what we're fighting for. Every race, every victory, brings us closer to changing this system. Hoffman believed in that. We honor him by continuing the fight." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Repair crews swarmed over the broken promise, patching up the damage from the race. Hack busied himself with data analysis, trying to make sense of the complex gravitational patterns they'd encountered. Anything to keep his mind off the empty space where Hoffman's ship should have been. Finally, it was time for the meeting. As Jeb prepared to leave, he turned to Hack. "I want you with me for this," he said. "Your tactical insight might be crucial." Hack felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension. As they made their way to the meeting room, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into another kind of race, one where the stakes were even higher. The room was tense as captains from all the racing teams filed in. Hack noticed that the surviving members of Hoffman's crew had been invited as well, their faces etched with grief and determination. A panel of race officials sat at the front, their expressions unreadable. As the last captain took their seat, the lead official stood. "Racers," he began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "Today's events have forced us to reconsider certain aspects of these competitions. The use of illegal weapons, the formation of alliances, the unexpected acts of sacrifice. It's clear that the landscape of racing has changed." Hack felt Jeb tense beside him, ready for whatever pronouncement was coming. "Therefore," the official continued, "we will be implementing a series of new regulations. Alliances will be officially recognized, but with strict guidelines. Weapons systems will undergo more rigorous inspections. And..." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "We will be introducing a new element to the races. Details will be provided in due course, but know this: the challenges ahead will test not just your racing skills, but your ability to adapt, to strategize, and to lead." As the meeting concluded and they filed out, Hack's mind was racing. "What do you think they meant by a new element, Captain?" he asked. Jeb's face was thoughtful. "I'm not sure, Hack, but whatever it is, we'll face it together. We've proven today that we're more than just a racing team. We're a family, a unit, and nothing they throw at us will change that." As they walked back to the broken promise, Hack realized that despite the loss, despite the uncertainty ahead, he felt a sense of hope. They had started this journey as prisoners, as entertainment for a corrupt system. But they were emerging as something more: leaders, innovators, revolutionaries. The races ahead would be more challenging than ever before. But as Hack looked at Jeb, at his crewmates, at the alliance they had forged, he knew they were ready. Whatever came next, the Broken Promise and its crew would meet it head-on, united in their quest for freedom and justice. The game had changed, and they were ready to play and win by their own rules. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.